surgeons, with the ultimate aim of improving quality of what we do, which is taking care of surgical patients, so that we can sustain continuously some superior outcomes of those patients.
Is the understanding that every single surgeon is a member of your society?
The Surgical Society of Kenya is open to all the surgeons in the country, be it generalists or specialist surgeons.
It's open too, but I was slightly more specific in saying to all the members. You know, when we had the elections recently, they said everybody involved was liable to legal prosecution because if they messed things up, they were part of the process and could be taken to book.
So the association is an association of all surgeons in the country. So in effect, all the surgeons in the country are members of the Surgical Association of Kenya.
Are they obliged to be?
No. In terms of what we do on a day-to-day basis, so they don't have to. That's why I'm saying they should be members, but then the active membership is about half the number that you currently have.
Right. And is there a cost implication to being a member?
There's a little cost implication, but I think for the surgical fraternity, I consider that wouldn't be a hindrance, because you need to pay some membership fee and then some annual retention.
Do we have a sort of population here that we're talking? Are we talking 1,000 surgeons, 10,000 surgeons? How many?
Unlike the American Surgical Association, which upwards of 70,000, the Kenyan Surgical Fraternity is only 480.
480, about 500 surgeons.
Yes.
Now, for the great masses of Kenyans watching this program, surgery equals operation. Having an operation, going under the surgeon's knife, scary. It's not utumishi kwa wote, we're scary.
No, John, I think I want to disabuse that notion. That's old school view of surgery. Surgery has moved from being just cutting and the knife to a whole science, so that now surgery means understanding surgical disease from how it comes about to whether or not the disease needs the knife as a treatment method. So when you're discussing surgery today, at least from our understanding of SSK, it's the whole gamut from what it is, does it need to be operated, so that when you're going to
I take your point entirely. I will say to you again, the public understanding is that you surgeons, if I may lump you within a great grandiose grouping, you encourage everybody to have an operation because it's expensive and it's good for business.
Like I said, it's a perception, and one of the things SSK must do is to educate the public that is not what the surgical fraternity stands for. Yes, indeed, if you have a surgical problem, you are our patient. But the process will take you through, the knife cannot be the first thing. We will take you through understanding what the problem is, and then together we'll come to a point whether you need that surgery or you don't. Not every lump needs to be removed.
Right. It's significant that you should use the word lump, because I'm going to talk about the values that you state. Excellence. We are committed to excellence in surgical health. Kenyans are very aware of the death of the late Wahome Mtahi, which started off with the idea of a very sort of run-of-the-mill removal of a lump that ended in death. He was comatose for so many weeks, and he ended up dying. Now, surely that's not good press for your profession.
Thank you for that question. Now, as an association, yes, excellence is one of our values, and we practice that, and we do that in several ways. One of the key things we do in the association is continuous medical education. Our annual conferences are where we come together and dialogue about what we do on our patients and the kind of outcomes that we get. Now, in terms of what the association does, we are interested in detailing the kind of outcomes that you get. And before you go into an
Sorry, you're into jargon speak, outcomes. I am saying in this instance, the outcome was mortality. The outcome was death, which is pretty final to me. And I would like to suggest that this gentleman went wherever he went because he didn't want to stay within Nairobi where it would be. So some kind of deal. Some surgeon was saying, come to me, I'll do it on the cheap, and it won't cost you anything. It cost him his life.
Now, what I was saying about outcomes is even as you go to that surgery, one of the discussions that we hold with patients is what is called the consent information. That operation is discussed for what it is to do in terms of
should be,
and then
should be, but 9 times out of 10 isn't. People are cutting corners, and you have no instruments of censure. Your folk can do what they like with a very good manifesto to back them up.
That's not true, because when you are discussing the surgical operation, the risk to that operation are discussed with the patient. And this risk, like for a lung, for example, would be a risk that, like, for example, if you get infected. Very rarely, death or mortality is a risk to even the smallest of operations. And there are many reasons why death can be an outcome for a very small operation. And this could be surgical, anesthetic, and all that. In terms of what the association is doing to protect the patient, the association encourages mortality reviews or death reviews or the unexpected. Whenever it happens, we need to go back to the operation and look at what it is that was done that shouldn't have been done, that wasn't done that should have been done, so that at the end of it, it's the patient that we want to protect. So the issue about we are doing it for money, I can't be able to provide evidence for you that that's what's happening in the mechanic case. So the issue about did we cut corners so that we went to a small, because even when it was done, the protocols are still the same. That the need for the surgery must be obvious. The consent information that this is what you're going to do and these are the likely outcomes. And I can tell you that outcome was unexpected.
So the idea, if the family were listening to us, they are wrong in trying to pursue this in courts in terms of having some sort of compensation, which is also something which is not part of our culture. In Europe, in America, elsewhere in the world, this idea, you would be scared to start operating on someone in case you were sued for unprofessional conduct. Again, we don't have that. The whole idea of censure, everybody's riding sort of roughshod over cases of experimenting, rather sort of like a Duakali mechanic on people's bodies.
Now, my response to that would be, as surgeons, when we do walk into that operation theater, or when we walk to class to mentor the young surgeons who are training, we're driven by a sense of duty, that we are going to solve a problem. And knowing very well that in the documented literature in surgery, there are complications. But you don't go into that operation knowing you're going to complicate. That's why...
Right, so the glass must be half full. You're optimistic of a positive outcome. Right. So I think we dealt the other value that you uphold is integrity. We uphold ethical conduct of surgery. And I dare say you touched upon that in your responses thus far. Another value, professionalism. We are guided by professional standards, systems, and structures. Do those professional standards include exorbitant costs?
Now, the issue of cost is a big one in terms of, if you look at the landscape of costing of surgical services in the country. But then, maybe just for information's sake, it depends on the level of care at which the operation or the service is being given. Now, if
may I take you up on that? Again, let's break this, your statements into... I could go in to have my appendix removed at a hospital, let it remain nameless in our time, but it might cost me 230,000 shillings. Same operation somewhere else, maybe 10 miles out, it will cost me 40,000 shillings. Same operation outside Huko Mashambani, 10,000 shillings. 230,000 down to 10 for the same removal of the appendix? How are you going to defend that?
My response would be twofold. I'll give my personal opinion later. But then in terms of
now,
in terms of what the association and then the medical board has done is to try and regulate all that because of what was exactly highlighted. The board now has a scheme of costing so that for an operation with a guideline, this operation would cost this time, between this amount and that amount. Having said that, however, remember there's perception out here that a certain operation can be best given at a certain institution by a certain, and I think in this free spirit, I can't stop John City from picking Professor
right.
Hassan.
The idea of choice. The idea of choice.
Yeah.
Right, taken. Now, so you've decided. I've decided to spend $250,000 shillings. That is my privilege. But this whole idea, again, professional standards, we're going to this idea that there are people who've been doing what they've been doing for years and years and years, and there is nothing about review, whether they are with it in terms of knowledge, and just by reputation alone, they can sort of operate to the grave. Acceptable?
That's not acceptable. But I can tell you from my personal experience, the landscape in the country is actually changing. Because when I was training, it was very obvious that when a certain consultant would opine on something, there'd be no contestation. But that has changed now, so that now the issue is more open and things have to be evidence-based.
Again, in Europe, I think I'm right in saying that there is a tradition of constant review, sort of going for your driving test a million times to just remind yourself that you know how to drive. You're not saying I learned how to drive in 1960 and therefore I should still be on the road. Is that culture infiltrating the Kenyan system?
Yes, in terms of making its first few steps, the culture is doing that, and this is driven by the board, the medical board and the association, so that now it is mandatory that you need to provide evidence that during the year under review you have engaged in some activity that would improve your skills and knowledge, rather than what used to happen in the past, that you could just operate with whatever knowledge best that you have and you still remain. So I think looking going forward, that landscape is going to be better in terms of people are going to now improve their knowledge bases and their skills, so that the Kenyan patient then becomes the winner at the end of the process.
Amongst your values, you wish to be compassionate. You care about the needs of members and patients. Kenya, devolved system of government, county government, surely the best in the field. And there's also this idea of choice. Is the best in the field going to operate from my county, Busia, as opposed to being in the big city, bright lights?
So we are aware, and we have been, even before the devolution, as an association, we have known that in the periphery, we do have patients and we have our colleagues who are out there who may be faced with conditions that may not be amenable to treatment out there. What we have done as an association is send people from the center to the periphery to try and assist and help with serving those.
Right, but I'm trying, the hidden sort of agenda that I'm going into is that you should all be being paid a uniform fee, like our ministers want to be at present.
I think payment is one issue, but I think
because I would go anywhere. I would go anywhere. I would go anywhere to be a surgeon. I would go anywhere to teach because I would be paid the same. And perhaps if I went the more remote the region, the better off I'd be, because chances are cost of living would be significantly reduced. So there's an incentive. But I don't think you earn as much as the surgeons in Turkana. You earn more.
Of course, in Nairobi, I mean, if you look at what I do outside, the private practice and all that, then obviously the earning levels are very different, because the paying power for the patient in the surgical condition in Nairobi can't be compared to. But if you look at the public sector, which is where most of our patients
to move quickly because of time.
Yeah.
Innovation, we strive to generate local knowledge and evidence. Local evidence and knowledge. Again, in a very recent case here, the late departed Matilda Colombo, in another field of medicine, pathology, nobody was interested in local knowledge. We had to bring Ian Madison Calder, although we have so many pathologists. In other words, you are not as good as a comparable surgeon in the US. I don't want you to touch me because I risk death.
Just before I answer that question, I'm encouraged by the last patient I operated who left the United States of America to come back home knowing that the surgeons here do a better job. And then she had to send pictures back in America that this operation was done. I think the problem is perception, the problem is information. Like our people need to know that not for every single case you need to go to India. These things can be done. These people who are here, some of them are staying in the same centers that you're going to.
Right.
So a lot of it is information, educating the public, and that's the total the issue. And
right. So are we moving towards this whole culture of what you mentioned in here?
Yes.
This whole culture of medical tourism. Are we going to be mentioned in the same breath as South Africa and India?
Yes.
So I suggest that we're not mentioned in the same breath because it's still too expensive.
Now, there's one thing you need to do. One, apart from the cost,
because you could have 10 people paying 20,000 bob and you get 200,000, or you could find one person paying 200,000 bob. Which would you prefer in your industry?
I think.
No, sorry, I'm sorry to use the word industry in your profession.
In terms of, for example, in our field, the more you do, the better. If you're going to have the numbers, and the numbers are brought in because you know the cost, so that would be a model that you need to go. But then in terms of the tourism aspect, one thing you need to do is, first of all, generate that confidence that, yes, in this country, there are people who can do this. And that is happening. If you look at Kenyatta, for some time used to actually the referral centers of the region. You look at the other towns, the hospitals, there are people from the region who do come to Nairobi. So Kenya is strategically placed to actually be the hub for medical tourism. Now, if the hindrance is cost, that I'll go to India because it is half the amount I'm paying in Nairobi, then that's something we can look at it and then say, fine, we have convinced the world that within our borders, the experts are there, the facilities are there. The issue is the cost, and that can then be handled so that the numbers can then make us move to where we want to be.
New government, new dispensation.
Yeah.
What is the ideal relationship that you would like to have with our new government in power?
I think it's just a dialogue in terms of, for example, if you say the surgical framework in the country. I mean, within the association, there are people from all cadres who've been managers, who've done all, and they can be able to give some idea as to what it is we can do to establish some system of managing a surgical patient, so that you can't be in a gamma ravine and you get quality care with outcomes you can
right. But if you're a kidney surgeon, for example, you need a dialysis machine to have the patients alive long enough for you to perhaps perform the surgery.
Yeah.
So who's going to buy the dialysis machine?
That's what I'm saying. From discussion, because, for example, we know we have kidney ailments in the country, but we know we're not going to have 47 kidney centers. We then need to say we're going to have 3 kidney centers which are around the country. Right. So this is happening elsewhere.
And that's equipment. What help do you want from government? Do you want the government to provide whatever it is, the incubator, or because we've had the argument being that you, as a practicing surgeon, would have to charge enough so that you could go and buy your own incubator dialysis machine. That's why you charge me 5,000 shillings a whack.
It's a principle. The government gets Kenyatta, for example, the radiation center for cancer patients in Kenyatta and maybe two. It's the same concept, that there will be a need for the public patients for that service. There's a need for that service for these patients, and that need has to be provided. Now, everything now is at Kenyatta and more is a part of. That's not a very efficient tool. Is it possible that it's also fine? What is the burden of our kidney diseases? Per year, how many of our patients are going to India? And with those numbers, what is the cost to the patient and the cost to the system if this thing is to be done here? Then you say based on the number, based on the cost calculation and implications, it serves us to have 3 in the medium term, but we start with 1 of 3 now. Dialogue, numbers, local evidence, presented for the
last question. I introduced you as the newly elected chairman since March, I do believe. 2-year term. Is it too much to ask you to opine on your legacy?
No. Within the 2 years, what I hope the association would be able to do is deliver on its strategy that was expounded when we last met in Mombasa. And we want to be known by Kenyans that this is a society, not a club of surgeons who sit in Nairobi. We've been doing a lot of good things in the last 13 years. Every year for the last 13 years, we have gone to every corner of this country to work on patients who are disadvantaged. There's a big need for surgery out there. We have done it alone. We want to do it with the rest of Kenyans. So come to us, Kenyans, let's work together.
Dr. Hassan Saidi, newly elected chairman of the Surgeon Society of Kenya. Thank you so very much for coming on the JSO interview.
Thank you, John.